so first question's from Mick. Best left/right hand synchronization exercise out there. Okay, so it comes from a problem where like the left or the right hand want to sort of outrun each other. So if we take like an alternate picking sort of thing, so one that I like to practice is like the Paul Gilbert one. That one. So the tendency with that, and like as you start to try to like bump up the speed to that, is that the right hand will keep going at the same speed, but the left hand will sometimes lag behind. Start doing it with a metronome, like, or actually a better thing to do would be use a drum track. Drum tracks are good because you're given a lot more rhythmic information rather than just a click. And just really like hone into like the little nuances of what your hands are doing, and just be like hyper aware of like where your left hand is. And like whatever aspect of the synchronization you think is out, you should be able to identify it really quickly, and especially if you record yourself, you should be able to see it. Also be aware of like whether you're doing 2 notes per string, or 3 notes per string, or 4 notes per string, or whatever. These are all important things to just like have awareness of when you're playing. And also like the picking direction as well, because that can also throw out your synchronization. Garrett asked, what was your main inspiration to focus on and play jazz fusion style guitar? Roy asked, what got you into jazz fusion / prog genre? Cool. And then Delta asks, what have been your biggest inspirations and how do you think they've impacted you? Soundtracks from games or movies? Bands, artists, or genre? Yeah, cool. In terms of what got me into it, I would say, when I was younger, I was listening to like Metallica, Megadeth, Rage Against the Machine, all that sort of stuff, all like guitar heavy music. Started getting more into the proggier side, like Dream Theater, Periphery, Polyphia. The roots for all that stuff is like from jazz and fusion. Yeah, so I started getting to swing and bebop and all that stuff. I was quickly introduced to like more fusion focused bands like Chick Corea Electric Band, more contemporary stuff like Dirty Loops. Video game soundtracks have always been there. And I guess like when I went to Japan in 2018, I discovered arcade music over there, and like rhythm game music specifically. So here we've got like Guitar Hero, but over there they've got like 100 different rhythm games that all have like a different like play style to them, and like different genres of music that go along with it. It's just a mix of Japanese music and sort of jazz and classical. My inspiration sort of just comes from like rhythm games and just like Japanese music in general. I'll put a bunch of links down below of some of the artists that I listen to, and I've got this big playlist that I put together. Naoki Yamamoto was definitely a big one for me. I'd say he was the catalyst for like what got me into like Japanese arcade music. I first heard Mind Eruption probably back in 2018, and that was actually when I was in Japan and I played Gitadora for the first time, and I was like what is this music? It's kind of like the first time I listened to like Dirty Loops or Dream Theater. It was just kind of like literally Mind Eruption. It was just insane. They're sort of confined to a minute or like a minute to 2 minutes in terms of like composition for like rhythm games. So to keep the player engaged, like the music has to be like super energetic and super dense and everything. And doing that in a jazz context is like next generation fusion in my eyes. Just so much arcade music out there. It's insane. And the problem is that it's not on Spotify, it's not on Apple Music, it's not on any of these streaming services. It's on YouTube mostly, and it's uploaded by like creators, and it's uploaded just by people who just have a passion for it. People who play the game and they'll just rip the song from the cabinet and put it on YouTube for people to listen to. And even that, like, it's still hard to find. I'd say the best place to go to find it, at least to find like the names of the songs and like where they're from and all that stuff, is a wiki called Remai. So Remai Wiki is basically like a database for all like arcade music, all arcade like cabinets. So you've got like Gitadora on there, you've got Sound Voltex on there, you've got Pop-In Music on there, Nostalgia, G.O.D, all these games, and all the different series of games, and all the music used in the championships and all different series. So the next 2 questions have to do with warming up. So we got, what do you do for warm-up? And then we've got, congrats, a good theory book to start with, and what is your warm-up schedule? Alright, so yeah, I don't really warm up with any like strict thing. I don't do the same thing every time. Generally it's just like something to get the motor running. I mean, that's really all it is. Like, it could just be like doing scales. It can be doing, you know, like whatever I need to do. If I'm warming up to do something that's going to be like very like alternate picking heavy, then I'm going to kind of put more focus on that. I'll do something that's more, you know, more jumpy like that. Like, I'll do like one note per string, like something like that. Or, you know, just doing scales through like that, but, you know, with like repeating each phrase. Something like that. One thing I like to do to get the left hand going is doing like your diminished. Stuff like that. And, you know, the further down you go, you'll feel the stretch a lot more. Once you do like a wide stretch thing like that, and then you go back to doing like your just normal stuff, you'll notice that your hand is just warm and it can just do that like just naturally. Now for a good theory book, Mark Levine, the Jazz Theory book, that's the one I used. So I did a 4-year like degree and everything, so a lot of my theoretical knowledge I just got from attending classes. In terms of like what I was studying at home, I just had that book open. It's like that thick. Yeah, it just covers everything. I mean, it sort of covers it from the perspective of like a piano player, but I mean, honestly, I think learning theory through like visually, like through like a piano is a lot easier. It makes a lot more sense. And then you can just sort of apply all that sort of knowledge and just find all the shapes on guitar. It covers like all your sort of modes and like all your symmetrical scales and voicings and like turnarounds and 2-5-1 lines and all that sort of stuff. So next question, do you usually write melody or chords first or mix it up? Okay, so I usually mix it up. You get a different result depending on which one you start with. If you start with chords, then you kind of have to write a melody that fits within the confines of the chords, like in the harmonic structure. Whereas if you start with a melody, you can kind of imply different tonalities and different, yeah, like even like different keys, like depending on like what chord you put under a melody. So like, you know, if you've got like something, you know, like E minor, like, you know, something like that. That note, so that's like the third in E minor. That could also be like, that could also be F or what's another one? Right, so you got all those possibilities to play with if you go that route. What would be another one? That's another one, a little bit more dense. A good way to break habits as well is just finding out how many different ways or how many different chords you can put under just that one note. Okay, so these next couple of questions are asking about transcribing. First one's from Toon. He's got a YouTube comment as well. What app/software are you using to slow down the specific song that you are currently learning? And then one from Chet, do you think transcribing is an important aspect of learning to improvise? Okay, well, I'll start with Chet. So yeah, so I mean, I think about music as a language, and I think the act of transcribing is learning someone else's language, or at least their interpretation of the language, and sort of bringing that into your own world. So yeah, definitely, it is very, very important. Doing transcription is really good for your ear, and the more that you can practice transcribing, the better that you are naturally able to hear things. So like I've spent many years transcribing like Japanese music, and specifically like rhythm game music. So I'm really good at sort of naturally hearing the progressions of that stuff. And I mean, there are still stuff that I have to sit down and like thoroughly work out. But for the most part, like if I listen to a J-pop song, I can just like write the chords out like as I'm listening to it, because it's just kind of naturally I can naturally hear what's going on. In terms of like improvisation, like it's the same thing. Like being able to recall the stuff that you transcribe in an improvisation is also something that, you know, requires a bit of practice. So in terms of what software I use, I mostly just use Reaper. So Reaper is my DAW of choice. It's what I use to create all my music in. I'm pretty sure that there are transcriber apps out there you can download, but I just use that because I'm used to the workflow. You know, I can repeat sections in it, I can speed up, slow down, you know, play and pause is really nice and convenient, it's just spacebar, it's all there. So yeah, so we'll step over to here. So what I'm using in this project is I've got 2 tracks, and the first track is the audio. So the song of choice I've got is Reflexes Manipulation, which is from Gitadora by Miyako Yamamoto. So yeah, it's not a long song, it's yeah, like just over 2 minutes. So basically what I do is I import it. First thing I do, work out the BPM. I already knew it, so I just put it in there, and then I just work out like the time signature map, which can take a little bit of time, but it's good in the long run because it's going to make everything work. Everything's going to sit well on the grid when I go to this phase. So this second channel down here, or the second track, is where I do like all of my transcribing. But just before we get to there, I'll give you an idea of what the song sounds like. Cool. So this next part here, this is where pretty much all the magic happens. What I'm using here is a MIDI track that I write out all the parts on. So my purpose with this like transcription was to work out all the melodic instruments. So, you know, the bass, the keyboard, just like the general harmony of the song, all the lead parts. So in this configuration, down here, I have access to different channels, and what I do is like, I assign each of these channels to a different instrument. And the way I do that is I use this little guy here. This is the Roland Sound Canvas, and I use this in my own music as well. But the cool thing about this is that it's basically just a general MIDI plugin, but the cool thing is that you've got a bunch of channels that you can load up on there. So yeah, the Roland Sound Canvas, and then I go through and assign, so actually before I jump out, piano, bass, and then guitar, and then like a square wave sort of sound there. So they're pretty much all the instruments that I could identify in the music. So for doing the bass, I usually go up to here, and I just put an EQ on there. So in terms of like working out a song like this that's very dense, I like to use an EQ just to kind of refine the sound or refine like what I'm listening to. So, you know, the bass, you can literally just like drop all the other frequencies out and just have that. So right now we're just left with bass. Which makes it much easier to work out. And I always usually do bass first because it'll help doing the chords. And it just gives me like a bit of a foundation to work off. Channel 2 is my bass, like that. So if we just listen to that. Bass, and then we get there. Like that. And then all the other instruments I've worked out are there. That's the piano part. Bring that one in with the bass. And then that kind of lead part, that like square wave. So that's most of, like that's kind of the bulk of the heavy lifting there. And then the other ones, oh sorry, guitar. Just doing a double and then so if we just hear it like just purely in MIDI form, it'll sound pretty honky. So yeah, I usually just go through each track, or rather each instrument, and just do that process. And it's literally just sitting here just doing this. So if we're doing keys, is like comparing it to the song. You know, is it major or minor? Or is it something else? Right? And I mean, it's kind of a weird one. This is the most time-consuming part. And if you just work from the point of view of just working out whether it's major or minor, or you know, just basic tone melodies to start out with, it can make the process go a little bit smoother, and you can get like more of a general roadmap idea of the harmonic like progression down a little bit quicker, and then later on you can go back, listen to it a little bit finer detail, and try to figure out like where the extensions are, or if you know, if it's an add 2 or add 4 or stuff, and that stuff like can be sometimes hard to hear. So here, like I've got this part highlighted, and if I want to repeat it, right, it gets a bit annoying, but after hearing that like on repeat, you'll eventually like figure out the chords. Nice bass solo there. Let's actually hear it. So you can hear with just the MIDI. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so yeah, that's how I do it. And if I ever wanted to learn this at some stage, then I've got the guitar part there I can just do. But having said that, I'll show you this little project here. So this is my cover of Lucid Nightmare, same artist, Miyaki Yamamoto. What I did here was just did the guitar part. That's all I had to do. I didn't bother learning or figuring out the chords or anything, because it was purely just for a video, purely just for a cover. So this only took me about 2 hours, and I find like just transcribing lead parts, or you know, just like melody, quite easy. So this is what we're dealing with. And then with it. Like that, and then we got a bit of a funk part here. Cool, and then the melody. Yeah, I mean, most of this didn't really take too long. It was mostly just this part here that took the longest, or I mean, it took the most amount of revisions, really. Like specifically hearing like all of those notes, and they're just happening so fast, and like the mix gets very chaotic in that part. That took like a little bit longer, you know, just doing stuff like this. Because when you do that, it makes whatever the notes are, it makes it really obvious. It makes it stick out. The Thalltone part at the end. So yeah, and the cool thing about doing it in MIDI is that, you know, if I want to hear it in a new key, or if I want to maybe, you know, make my own thing out of it, you know, I might just, you know, oh, I like this part, and then maybe what about if it, you know, what about if it did that instead, or you know, what about if I, you know, did that or something, you know, things to kind of generate ideas based off stuff you learn. That stuff's all well and good. Cool. Question from Really Powerful. Why are your fingers so long, oh god? It's like you have two daddy long legs for hands. Okay, so yeah, bigger than average, I'd say. But don't let that trick you. It still takes a lot of work. And having long fingers really only helps for doing like stretches, I think. I mean, I don't know what it's like having, you know, shorter fingers, but in terms of like the application of it, like if I'm doing a chord like this, like something like that, you know, someone with even longer fingers than me wouldn't have to do this like weird kind of pivot with the right, with the middle finger. that have their fingers more straight and they'll be able to just reach it easier. So yeah, even with short fingers, that's still possible. It's just that you have to kind of reach around a lot more to grab it. And you want to be able to do it like in time as well. Like you want to be able to go and be able to play, you know, those wide stretches cleanly like that. Louis asked, thoughts on Thalltone scale? ETA on album, when is your album coming out? Soon. I'm aiming for mid next year, mid 2020. That's sort of where I want to be. At the moment, it's all pretty much written. I'm just sort of deciding on like track listing and how many songs I want to have on there. But yeah, pretty much the whole thing is nearly done. I just have to do recording and just sort out artwork and all that other stuff. But yeah, hopefully by mid next year. Carl asks, are you available for lessons? Yes, I am. I've got an email that I've specifically created for lessons. So if you have any inquiries and want to know pricing and availability and all that stuff, just send it to that address. Do you also plan on selling less complex / intermediate level tabs? Well, currently not. I generally just release tabs for the songs that I've put out. Yeah, I mean, if you want to check out like the 5 tasty chord progressions one, or even like the 3 etudes one, I mean, most of those are pretty hard, but yeah, there's one called Modal Mixture. That one's not too bad. I mean, by nature, most of my music is pretty complex. I mean, I don't sort of do that going into it. It's just kind of like naturally what comes out. But yeah, maybe in the future. Question from Vision, how can I start with shredding and tapping? Depends what you mean by shredding. If you purely just mean like really fast notes, then play slow notes, but fast. Just learn some solos, that's the best way. Just learn some vocabulary. Like even just learn like, you know, Enter Sandman, like the, you know, like the solo to Enter Sandman, or, you know, if you want to do some tapping, do, like the first thing I learned how to tap was like just, you know, like Eruption. Right? But you're using the right hand as like an extension of your left hand, and it's getting the feel of generating that note with the other hand and sort of marrying those two hands together. It's kind of like an oversaid thing, but like play slowly. Like it's really important to play slowly. In fact, like when I'm learning music, I learn it at half the speed and then I speed it up later. And what I find is that I don't actually have to speed it up. It's just when I know where all the notes are and when I've figured out like all the technical aspects of it, you know, at that slow speed, then I can just naturally do it at that higher speed. I don't have to work up to it. It's just kind of there. So yeah, solos. Learn lots of solos. Question from Jolt. What are the essential things to make good music? Well, yeah, good melody. I mean, that's the main thing. I mean, that's the kind of takeaway that most people have from music is, you know, if you can remember it after you've just listened to it, then you're doing good things. Yeah, like a good groove. It depends on the music, really, in terms of like subjectively what I look for and what the stuff that I like hope to create. Is I just want it to sound fun. That's the main like aesthetic like reason why I make music is. Yeah, I just want to like sort of take the listener on a bit of a journey. Think about like instrumentation, like everything that makes other music good still applies. It's just that I kind of have to like reframe it a little bit. Obviously it needs to sound good. Sonically as well, like good mixing. Creativity is definitely really important as well, and I think it's what keeps you coming back to a particular artist. And I mean, if you can do things in music that's palatable, but it's also breaking outside the box, having that kind of level of unpredictability I think is really important. One video game soundtrack you think everybody should know? That is a can of worms, my friend. Probably Kingdom Hearts. That's definitely up there. I don't think I can just give you just one. Kingdom Hearts is something I've been listening to lately. Yeah, Kingdom Hearts 3D Dream Drop Distance. That's really good. The first game, second game, the third game, they're all really good. all like super orchestrally. Persona soundtracks, they're really good. Persona 5 is probably my favorite soundtrack. At least like in terms of like all the songs being good, like Persona 5 is definitely up there. Yeah, Dark Cloud 2, I mean, they're my childhood games. They kind of hold nostalgic place in my heart. Yeah, Dark Cloud and Dark Cloud 2, definitely. Tips for smooth modulations. The best way to modulate would be to use like different cadences. So like, you know, going like 5-1. Maybe like that, so doing like a 2-5-1 sort of thing. So you're just traveling in fourths. So like, so we're trying to get to E flat. So we went C, F, B flat, E flat, and if you look at circle of fourths, or circle of fifths if you go the other way, if you go counterclockwise, you're basically just going C and then you're traveling around to E flat. So use circle of fourths. That's going to be like a guaranteed way to kind of like move to different keys that are going to sound like quite nice. But if you want to go like a little bit more out there, if you want to modulate to say like F sharp, which is the tritone, the furthest away, to C major, and then you can go like this. Right, so you got C, and then you've got this thing, which is like a B, what is it, D flat over B, like that. And it sounds nice because I'm paying attention to the voice leading. I've got that chromatic melody note at the top. So another thing would be modal interchange. So modal interchange is taking one of the chords in a key and changing the flavor of it. In C, we've got C major, D minor, and E minor. So like if we change the D minor to D7, we can use that 7 chord that we've created as a pivot into a new key, because we can think like, you know, what does D7 naturally want to resolve to? It wants to go to G. One way would be to go, is to make that G major a minor, right? It's all about sort of light and shade with modulations, at least from my point of view. Because you can do, you know, big modulations like the end of the song, you know, like Living on a Prayer, like, yeah, that does the minor third modulation. But yeah, like this is just stuff that you can just integrate into like pre-existing chord progressions and ways to kind of do variations on them. Which pick? I use Jazz 3s. Just 1mm Jazz 3s, it's pretty much what I've been using for the last 4 years. Sort of always been there. I've got a few variations of it. There's the 88mm version, like this one. That one there. Just a Dunlop Tortex. And then these Darbour ones are not too bad. So they've got like a soft grip, but like a hard tip. So they're quite good as well. I've got this one that Stone Age pick sent me, which is cool because it's got this beveling on the edge of it. Quite a thick pick, and it's really good if you're doing like any alternate picking or any like something where you need like a lot of attack. It's really good for that sort of stuff. What was the click point in alternate picking for you aside from the technique change? So the technique change, not many people know about, but essentially I used to be a reverse pick slanter, which means that instead of like attacking the pick like this, I'd go like this. So I would literally have to hold the pick. I was literally holding the pick like this. So like as if like you're pitching something, I would literally just hold it like that. So, and the reason why I changed is because I realized that the way I was doing it had like a technical ceiling on it. I was at the point where I was trying to do like a lot of heavy alternate picking stuff, but I realized that I couldn't get like any more out of this. Because like for the most time I was just doing legato and I could just get by with just doing like the picking I'd always learned. It took a while and I was contemplating doing it, like is the time investment going to be worth it? And honestly, for about a month, it was quite a struggle, like trying to kind of like relearn like a whole new technique. I'm glad that I did, because like the way I'm holding it now is like more traditional. It's just easier at the end of the day. Like I'm not sort of tensing my hand as much, and I'm able to get sort of more notes happening, but with less motion. And I'm finding like string skipping is a lot easier as well. I don't think there was really a click. I think the initial getting past the whole overhaul, like that probably took about a month. That definitely did click one day. But in terms of like alternate picking as a whole, like it never really has clicked. I've just kind of slowly gotten a little bit better every single day. And it's just the sort of thing you just have to like practice a lot. I don't think I'll ever get to the point where I'm going to be happy with it. It's sort of just letting go of that sort of expectation. You just have to accept who you are now and where your ability is at, and then just practice. That's the main thing. Nathan asked, do you have any other big hobbies / interests aside from guitar? Honestly, I don't. This is my main gig, and I get a lot of fulfillment from it. I don't really do that much else. I play some video games, certainly a lot less than what I used to. At the moment, I'm really into watching like speedruns for some of my childhood games like Jak and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank. Yeah, I mean, video games has always been there. I don't play as much as I used to. I watch a little bit of anime sometimes. I'm watching the newest season of JoJo, which is really, really good. I watch some movies. I mean, yeah, it's pretty much just downtime stuff, like, you know, because I'm here most days doing this. But yeah. What is the first thing you play every day? The first thing I play every day is probably the last thing I played. If I'm learning something, then that's usually the first thing on my mind. I mean, if you think about the very, very first thing, it's probably that. Kind of goes back to the warm-up thing. Things to get the motor running, plus things that I'm currently involved in. How did your song get put in Gitadora? Yeah, that was a big thing for me. That was something I've been working towards for a long time, and then it just kind of happened, and pretty much out of nowhere. But yeah, Konami have had relationships with Paris On Demand for quite a while. They did an album that was G.O.D 111. The idea is that all the songs are 111 seconds, and all those songs, well, I think all the songs were put into the game because they have to sort of meet a certain time limit. But yeah, they were sort of interested in the new album, and you know, my song Giorama was on the new album. They were interested in having a couple of songs from the album put into the game. That was kind of my break into that, and I just had to create like a shorter version of it, which was really fun. What are your PC specs? i7, 32 gigs RAM. That's about all I can remember, honestly. I'll put a picture up on screen so you can see. I recently upgraded it because I was finding it was a little bit slow, especially when I was doing, you know, bigger projects. I'd find I'd have to have like 3 or 4 different projects, which I shouldn't really have to do at my stage. Upgraded memory, I was on 8 gigs before, which was tiny for what I needed. Basically just a gaming PC, but with like lots and lots of SSDs and hard drive space. I want to play some Sean Lane, Get You Back Legato, but my hands are small. Okay, so going back to the hand size thing again, I don't know what it's like to have smaller hands than I have. All I can really say is most people tend to restrict themselves and say I can't do something because of like who they are, or you know, genetically how big their hands are or whatever. I think 90% of it is technique, and the other 10% is just genetics, and you know, you can if you've got long fingers, then that 10% is, you know, it's fulfilled. But yeah, it's just technique at the end of the day. As we're talking about, like with the stretch thing, you know, someone with longer fingers wouldn't have to do that weird technique thing there, like where the second finger is kind of inverted. So yeah, I would say just go for it. I think most legato phrases, they're going to take place, you know, over kind of like the 2 to 3 fret jump. Anything beyond that, you know, is going to be difficult, like regardless, even if you've got like big hands like I do. Yeah, just practice it. Like that's the main thing. Another question from M. Sinclair. How do you approach writing chord progressions? I think learning lots and lots of different chord progressions is going to be the best way, because in terms of writing, your ability to write chord progressions is based upon the knowledge that you've learned. So if I don't learn any jazz and I just do, like if the only chord progressions that I learned were pop chord progressions, then I would find it very hard to write like a jazz chord progression. You know, the same thing. If I wanted to write a pop progression, I would find it very hard to not make it complex, like a jazz progression. You can come at it from a few different angles. So like with the Space Cruise thing, that idea is based on just like a more of a symmetrical pattern. So you've got like, so it starts with like E, or like an E9, E add 9. And then what I'm doing is I'm approaching the next chord from the flat 6 of this. So if we're E minor, that's the flat 6, the C. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then if I find that C down there, and do the same chord, right? And then I do the same thing, same process from C now. So find the flat 6 of C, right? That's A flat. So that's really non-diatonic. And then the funny thing is, like, if you go flat 6 from A flat, you actually just end up back at C. So, back at E. And then what I did to keep it going a bit longer is I went like this. And then that B flat there, I'm treating as a 5 to go to E flat. And then from there, I'm doing the same progression. What you want to try to do is like have a few different approaches. So that's one way. Another way would be doing cycling, right? Stuff like that, where you're just kind of cycling through fourths and fifths. This isn't even taking into consideration like any sort of like chord flavors. So like you can make, you know, this, you know, it's just minor, minor, major. You can have like, you know, something like that, a little bit more colorful. Same contour, same bass note, but just like slightly different harmony. You know, moving in parallel. You know, that stuff's always good. Going back to like this thing, you know, I got that mostly from like movie scores. Parallel major chords, like, so you got like E major to C over E, or that's used quite a lot. So if I'm writing a chord progression with all this information, you know, I can start. Do you have guitar course? Currently I don't, so apart from like the tabs that I sell on my Bandcamp, I don't really have any sort of like formal like lesson packages you can download. Probably in the future I'll have something. Honestly I don't feel like I have enough like unique concepts to talk about, because I mean I don't want it to just be how to play sweep arpeggios or, you know, like how to like improvise on a jazz standard. I feel like that information is already out there, probably in the future, but you can always send me an email if you want to have lessons.